And welcome to Channel KT4, broadcasting live on Facebook and YouTube. You can join in by sending in questions during the show. Just press the comments button on the screen. Don't forget to like the like or share buttons. If you're watching on YouTube, please click to subscribe to Channel KT4. So, I'm delighted to welcome to the studio Ray Kennedy, an archaeologist from Cotswold Archaeology and project manager of the archaeological excavations which have been taking place at the Gunpowder Mills on Old Malden Lane in Worcester Park. Welcome, Ray, and thank you for agreeing to take part in the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
Well, it's great to see you, and I've been watching with interest everything that's been going on with all the unearthing of this incredible site. But what a fascinating find, which I'm sure is of great interest to many people. Yeah. Cotswold Archaeology, in collaboration with the builders Taylor Wimpey and Surrey County Council, have been working together on this project. Here's an image of the site, Ray. Could you tell me just a little bit about it?
As you can see from this drone photograph, you can see the image of two gunpowder mills and the associated water culverts that would have powered the mills. So you've got on the left you have powder mill A, and on the right you have powder mill B, which is the one that's less intact and was subject to an explosion in 1848. Okay,
were both mills producing the same style of gunpowder, or were they slightly different?
As far as we were, they were producing the same style of gunpowder, which was kind of a relatively cheap mass-produced powder that was quite profitable and was generally exported abroad. But then later on, the mill gained government contracts and was supplying to the government, so it had to meet certain criteria, and would have been only one of 10 mills in the country that did so.
Okay, so how did Cotswold Archaeology get involved in this project, Ray?
Well, as a condition of planning, Cotswold Archaeology, as a condition of planning, Taylor Wimpey would have been told how to do archaeological works on the site. And so in November, Cotswold Archaeology did an archaeological evaluation where we dug a series of trenches across the site to test for any archaeology. That was when we found the remains of structures, which we weren't sure what they were, but we thought they were the gunpowder mills. But obviously the county archaeologist, Nigel Randall from Surrey County Council, recommended that we begin excavations at the site to open up a larger area to see if we did see the mills. And we've been conducting those works since February with a break because of the COVID situation in between. So the works are being funded by Taylor Wimpey.
Yeah, I'm sure that's been quite a bill for Taylor Wimpey to do all of this, but I suppose that comes with the territory, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's just the nature of the modern planning system, and something the builders were quite happy to get on with, and they're quite happy to pay for it.
Ray, here's a site map. Can you explain the layout? And until I started looking at this, I wasn't aware that there were two mills, which we just briefly talked about on the site. Yeah. But I think this gives the viewers a really good concept of where everything is.
Yeah, so this is a 1848 map of the site, and you can see the two mills in the center of the site in blue and purple, running northeast southwest is the mill pond that would have held the water that was lifted from the Hogs Mill and then would have been released into the two powder mills.
Okay, Ray, could you just say whether you're talking about going left to right?
Oh, sorry. Sorry
about that.
Sorry, the right mill is powder mill A and the left mill is powder mill B, and the blue line that's running left to right across the site is the mill pond, which would have held the water for the powder mills themselves, and then the dark blue line that is running from the top of the page to about halfway through the page are culverts that lead down to the River Hogs Mill, and that's where the water would have that the mill had used would have escaped back into the river.
Sorry, Ray, could you just tell me again, whereabouts is the Hogsmill River on this?
Oh, it's in the top left-hand corner of the page. You can just about see it below the.
Oh, got it now. Yeah.
Yeah. Just below where it says Powder Mill B. Right just above, sorry.
Okay. It's absolutely fascinating, isn't it? Can you tell me a little bit about the history of the site? I believe it dates back to around 1720. Am I right in that assumption?
Yes, as far as we're aware, there's been a gunpowder site on this gunpowder mill on the site since the 1720s. So this year will be its 300th anniversary. A family called the Taylor family owned the mill for about 150 years. So they leased the land in 1720 and built the mill. They were merchants from London. They owned a couple of other mills around the country, including one in Wandsworth. And around 1760, they bought the mill, and then bought the land from the owner. And then in the 1770s, John Smeaton, who's considered the father of British engineering, he redesigned the mills and updated them in order to increase capacity of the mills. And then James Watt, the famous steam engineer, he designed the steam engines on the site that would have pumped the water from the Hogs Mill into the mill itself, into the mill pond. And the site operated until about 1854. There was about 7 explosions, and then it finally shut in 1854. Sorry.
Okay, Ray, tell me a little. I'm fascinating about this steam engine.
Yeah.
Or steam engines. Were they actually on tracks going from the river to the mill pond?
No, we think it would have been. We haven't found any archaeological evidence, but we think it would have been a fixed steam engine that would have pumped the water from the river up until the mill pond. But unfortunately, we don't have any archaeological evidence for that at the moment. But we have records of the steam engine being being installed on the site in the 1770s.
Nearby, of course, there would have been Worcester Park House, which is the other side of the Hogs Mill, and there was a lake there. And probably, was there a conduit underneath what was now the road that would also have been an outlet of water into the site?
Well, we think so. We haven't found any evidence of that, but the historic mapping would seem to indicate that there is a link between that lake and the site, but we don't have any evidence for it currently. But the mill pond does seem to be filling naturally from the south of the site, as well as having water pumped into it.
Okay. Also, around this time, we had the watercress beds on the Hogs Mill, which would have been at the same place as well, wouldn't it? Was that at the same time, or was the watercress beds before the powder mill?
I'm not quite sure on the date would be, but I imagine they were probably contemporaneous.
Yeah. Okay. Right. I've got an incredible set of photographs of the site. So I think the best way to do this, Ray, I've been thinking how best to put this across to our viewers, is to put them on screen and for you to tell us all about them. And I've got to say, I believe you had a drone going above to take some of the pictures. And so here we go. Let's start with, I think this is the old mill. There we are.
Yeah, this is a drone shot of what we're calling Powder Mill A. And you can actually see the buttressing around the mill, building that would have helped support the building. And then you can also see the culverts from where water would have flowed in to power the mill and then flowed back out again down towards the river.
So on that map, would that be on the left-hand side of the map or the right-hand side of the map?
The right-hand side.
The right-hand side,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah. And this is the best preserved of the 2 powder mills we have on the site. And it's the one from which we've retained most information. And this is also the one that was repurposed as a flour mill in the late 19th century, following the closure of the powder mill.
Ah, I didn't know that. So it also became a flour mill. So did we have at one time a powder mill and a flour mill in A and B?
Just a flour mill in A, because we think B was probably the one that exploded and eventually shut the gunpowder mill.
Okay.
So yeah, so you can see that some of the holes that have been created in the mill are actually where they've modified the mill to turn it into a flour mill from a gunpowder mill.
Okay. Here's another picture for you. I like this picture.
Yeah. Again, this is gunpowder mill A, the best preserved one. You can see inside the vaults of the structure where the mechanisms of the gunpowder mill would have been the millstones, and then you can also see the culverts with the water flowing in and out, and then what else can you see? You can see you can see more of the buttressing. We don't have any archaeological evidence of this, but the superstructure of the building would have been made of wood, so that the event of an explosion, it would have blown out. It's only the foundations that were made of brick.
Okay. And
again, yes, it's more photos of Powder Mill A, because obviously it's the best preserved example. But
yeah,
again,
absolutely.
This is an earlier stage of excavation before we dug out the vaults. So you can see more of what it would have looked like before it was excavated, before we realised the extent of it in many ways and how deep it is. Again, Powder Mill A, just from a different angle. Again, showing, you can see the buttressing, the blast walls. At the bottom left-hand corner, that's a blast wall with the buttressing up against it, to contain the force of any explosion. You can see from here, you can see the culverts a lot better as well. And you can also see the southern vault, where they would have had more of the millstone mechanisms.
Okay. Are those culverts, are they in the top center where we can see there's two holes?
Yeah, they're the culverts where the water would have come into the mill and then flowed back out again. Just to the left of the upper culvert, you can see a lower culvert, and that would have been where the water was flowed out to the hogs mill.
Right. Okay. Did it actually the water fill those culverts, or was it partially filled? Or
we're not quite sure, but I imagine it would probably be enough just to turn the millstone, so whatever flow rate they needed. But they're quite wide. They're about 2 meters in diameter, so they would have taken quite a large volume of water. Yeah. So it shows the scale of the operations.
Oh, sure.
And then this is Powder Mill B. As you can see, it's much less well intact. You can see the culvert just at the top of the page, top of the photograph, that would have flowed in, where the water would have flowed into the mill. And basically, this is all that's left of the Powder Mill B, and this is the powder mill that we think exploded in 1854. That resulted in the closure of the mill itself, because of the amount of damage that this explosion caused. We have records of newspapers of the locals complaining about their windows being blown out from the force of the explosion.
Wow.
In the local newspapers. But as you can see, the damage must have been extensive, because this mill would have looked like Powder Mill A originally. So you can see the amount of damage the explosion must have, the force of the explosion, the amount of damage it must have caused.
Yeah. And here's another one.
Yeah, this is the long culvert. You could see in the map, the top of the 1848 map, and this is the culvert.
This is the one we were talking about on a couple of pictures ago, wasn't it? Where we had the culvert in the top center.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this leads from Powder Mill from Powder Mill B back to the river. So it's quite a long culvert. It's much larger, more substantial than the culvert in Powder Mill A. And you can see where the brick wall at the top of the photograph, where the culvert stops, that would have been that would have led to a leat, which is an open water channel, and then the leat would have led to the river. And again, it's you can see where they've repaired it in various places, and also where they've put buttressing on the culvert just to support. You can see some extra added brickwork where they may have had maybe a road or something running over the culvert, so they've added extra supports. Okay,
here's another interesting picture, again of Powder Mill A, I think, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, it's in the later stage of excavation. As you can see, where at this point we were starting to investigate the mill a lot more, so we stuck a machine slot through the upper culvert to check its diameter, and we'd also done that in the lower culvert. You can see a hole in the top of the page, again, to check the diameter of the lower culverts in order to be able to see the extent of it and how stable it was. And there was also to allow the builders to be able to see how stable the culvert was in terms of their construction plans.
Okay, Ray, I've just received a comment that's come in. I'll put it up on the screen for you so you can have a look at it. Yeah. There we are. And if you'd like to say a few words about it from what Kim's saying.
Yeah, I think William Hunt, I think he's a pre-Raphaelite painter. I think he lived in the area at the time, and I think he did paint in the vicinity of the mill. Yeah, he's basically just he's probably describing the explosion of the day the mill basically ended. You know, it was obviously enough that people did know, like, it was such a large explosion, people did notice, and it's great that we actually have records that he's actually describing the day it happened.
Yeah, I think he was living at the Worcester Park farm, I think, around that time, which is pretty close to where the powder mills are.
Yeah.
I think that's right. And here's another one.
Yeah, again, this is just a different angle of the powder mill A, where, again, in the later stages of excavation, where we've started to dig around it, to check the foundations, and just to see how we developed. You can see the depth of the vaults much clearer, and it helps you to imagine the scale of the actual structure itself, and the mechanisms that would have been inside it during the operations. Again,
that's a great aerial shot, isn't it?
Yeah, this is a nice aerial shot, and you can see in the top the two circles in the top, and this is powder mill A. You can see the two circles in the top of the powder mill. They're actually the modifications that for when it was turned into a flour mill in the 1870s, where they've actually just poked holes through the brickwork in order to install their turbine for their flour mill. And basically, yeah, it's just basically a nice overview. Just gives you you can see the blast walls to the left of the photograph and to the right of the photograph at either end of the powder mill, and you can also see just the depth it goes to. It just gives it it's a great scale. And to the left of that photo would have been where the mill pond was, just where the photo grays out would have been where the mill pond would have been originally.
Okay, and
this isn't a great photo of the millstone, but this is one of the millstones we recovered from the site. It's about 2 meters in diameter. It probably came from the Pennines in Derbyshire, so it's probably mined at the Pennines in Derbyshire, and it weighs 4 tons. And this basically would have been there would have been a pair of these millstones running together in each. So there would have been four millstones in each pair in each powder mill. So it gives you the size of the millstone of the actual mechanisms within the powder mill itself. But Taylor Wimpey have agreed that this millstone will be displayed on the development. So once the development's finished, people will be able to go look at this millstone and just see the scale of it. You know,
yeah, I believe it's going to be somewhere near to the main entranceway, isn't it? And they're going to piece it together very cleverly.
Yeah,
so it becomes one millstone, which I think is really good. And this what we're looking at now will be the only bit that we'll be able to see in the future of the powder mills.
Yeah, yes, it'll likely be the only bit you'll be able to see on the surface, of the powder mills. But it's nice to be able to recover something.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
It's an idea of the scale of the industry that was going on the site.
I agree. Here's there's a picture.
Yeah, it's just it just shows you the excavations we've been doing. You can see both powder mills in the powder mill A in the foreground and powder mill B in the background. You can just see the scale of the excavation we're doing. Where the flags are is obviously Old Malden Road, our lane, running to the south of the site. And it just gives you an idea of the scale of the operations.
Yeah, so that's basically looking at it from here. If I was taking this picture, I'd have my back to the hogs mill.
Yeah, you'd taking that picture from the river. Yeah.
Okay. And I think this is an incredible picture. But if I'm right, when we look at that archway, underneath the archway, there's a pillar.
Yeah, there's that pillar is we think is from the the development that when the site was built over in I think the 1950s, they put a pillar through the culvert. They obviously didn't know it was there, and they obviously stopped when they realised they'd obviously put a sleeved pillar into the culvert, and then poured concrete in, and then realised what they had, and then stopped the development. So that's actually an intrusion probably from the 1950s.
Right.
Where you can see there.
Yep. Okay, I can see that. Now, I hear that during the powder mill's history, you've mentioned it, but there were a number of explosions, and there were more than we would anticipate. There weren't just one or two. There was something like 9, I believe, explosions.
I think, as far as I'm aware, there was 7 explosions, and unfortunately, 4 people were killed over about a 150-year period on the site in explosions on the site. There was an 1741 and 42, 1760, 1843, 1844, and then 1854 when the powder mill closed. And we have records, documented records from the local newspapers of at least 3 of those explosions. Unfortunately, by its very nature, gunpowder mills have a tendency to explode. Black powder, which is what was made here, usually needs a spark or percussion to cause an explosion. So the staff on the mill would have worn copper hobnail shoes, because iron hobnail shoes would have caused a spark. So, and the black powder would have been kept quite wet, in order to make sure it didn't explode. So, yeah, unfortunately, at least 4 people were killed on the site, which is quite sad. But unfortunately, health and safety was a bit different in those days.
Yeah. Okay. I've got a note come through here from Jeff Cousins, which I'll just put up on the screen for you.
Yeah.
There we go. Maybe Worcester Park or Ewell Station, as Malden Manor, didn't open until 1938.
Oh.
I'm
not familiar.
Here because Kim has come back again, and she's also mentioning the station.
Oh, okay. Sorry, this is in relation to the pre-Raphaelite, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yeah, because the famous there's a painting of the Six. Is there a Ophelia drowning 6,000?
Yes, there is, DJ, which is just probably about 750 meters downstream from where the powder mills are.
Okay.
That's where that took place. And we talked about the mill pond a little bit,
yeah.
and about the engine,
yeah.
And it. But could you just expand a little bit more on how they pump the water from the hogs mill? How does it pump out of the hogs mill? I didn't quite get that. I've got the caveats. I've got the steam engine.
Yeah.
I've got the mill pond, but I can't piece how it comes out of the water and gets to it.
Yeah.
Sorry to be a bit pedantic about that.
Well, the hogs mill is about on average is about 12 feet below the site. So they would have used a steam engine to create like a suction, like you would to suck water up into the pond is what we think is happening. So they would have had a series of pipes leading into the river, and then they would have created a vacuum. They would have used a steam engine to create a vacuum in a tube to suck the water up, like they would do in a waterworks. And we think that's how they filled the mill pond, because obviously the mill pond's being 12 feet above the river, it makes it hard to fill it unless you use a steam engine. Yeah,
but I mean, pretty inventive technology for its day.
Yeah, this was when the steam engine was installed, it would have been cutting edge technology. As I said, James Watt, we believe, designed the engine and installed it, and he's obviously one of the fathers of British steam engineering. So yeah, it would have been a pretty big undertaking, probably quite expensive to install it, but it was obviously considered worth it. Yeah.
Now, how did they grind the powder? That's a good question.
They would have used a series of millstones, similar to the one that you was shown earlier. There was 4 pairs of millstones in each mill, and they would have ground the powder down to the required consistency. And then once the powder had gone through those larger mills, it would have then gone into larger millstones. It would have gone down into a series of smaller millstones that would have ground it to a smaller level to make it even finer. So basically, it is literally just a case of mixing the powder, mixing the ingredients of the powder, and then grinding it down to the consistency that you need in order to use it use it how you use it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, the question everyone's asking, Ray, is what's the plan going forward, and how significant is this site, both locally and nationally?
The plan going forward is that, unfortunately, in order to allow the development to go ahead, we're currently monitoring the demolition of the structures. They're being archaeologically monitored and recorded as they're being demolished. And then once the works are finished, we'll begin works on research, and eventually we're hoping that we'll be able to produce a book which will come out in the next couple of years about the site, and which we're quite excited about, because obviously, in terms of local significance, the site is the Ewell region is quite well known for its mills, paper mills, and gunpowder mills. So it's quite locally significant, and in terms of nationally, we think this is going to be the first gunpowder mill that's ever been archaeologically investigated. Obviously, there is a number of gunpowder mills such as Waltham Abbey you can go visit, but we think this is going to be the first one that's ever archaeologically investigated. So it is quite significant in that sense, and everyone's very excited. And Matt and Alice, who've been doing the works on the site, have done a great job, and they're very very interesting.
Okay, so there is going to be a whole program of this, and people will be able to go and look at the illustrations and all the things that go along it. So it's not entirely lost.
No, we've comprehensively mapped and photographed the entire structure, and the report will, once it's finished, will go up online for anyone to view. And I believe there's also going to be interpretation boards put on the site, explaining to the residents what was under their feet prior to the development. So it'll keep the memory of the site.
Okay, right. I've just got a couple more comments that are coming in, Ray, and I think you'll just like this one. It's just very simply, very interesting. Thank you from Rachel. So thank you, Rachel, for that. We have one here from John. And why not keep the structures and allow access through the new houses? Would make a great wine vault for each house. Hey, I like that idea.
Yeah, it'd be a nice idea.
Wouldn't that be good? And it'd be just down the road from me as well. That would be really, really good. Look, Ray, it's been fascinating chatting with you, and thank you for coming into my virtual studio.
Yeah,
I only wish the site, sorry?
I said, thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. I only wish the site could have been preserved, or at least some of it, as part of our cultural heritage. Ladies and gentlemen, from Cotswold Archaeology, the project manager of the old powder mills, Ray Kennedy. Thank you, Ray.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye now.